for me, again, it's just about being a part of enabling something much bigger than myself. And I have to tell you something that little girl in her home who wanted to be a marine biologist never would have dreamt in a million years I would sit in the UN and be talking about something as big as mental health on a global space. It is the biggest honor of my life.
Welcome to the She's So Sweet podcast, where we interview accomplished women who have worked their way to the C-suite. I'm your host, Kristi Faltorusso, Chief Customer Officer and award-winning customer success executive. I am so thrilled to introduce today's guest. I've got Rebecca Jones, who's the president of Mosaicx, on with us today. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
I am so honored that you were taking time. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on and you're super busy. So to gift us an hour of your time, it is super appreciated. So thank you so much.
No problem. I really appreciate your invitation. I'm humbled by the opportunity to join you and talk more about my journey, and just hope that inspires other women to take the step forward.
And that's the goal here. I shared with you the mission behind this podcast and how it all got started. And it's only possible by amplifying the voices like yours, the stories, those journeys. And so I'm excited to get in. So why don't we start with this? Why don't we tell a little bit about Mosaicx, your role, kind of what that looks like today?
Sure. Thank you so much. So I'm the president of Mosaicx. We are a subsidiary inside of West Technology, and we provide a cloud-based conversational AI tools across a number of different verticals. Mosaicx has actually been around for about 30 years. So we're a pioneer in the space of conversational AI and customer experience. Our product leverages like machine learning and natural language processing to kind of interact or automate those interactions between customers and brands, and really drives kind of a positive experience for companies' employees as well as their customers. And it's a really exciting time to be in that space because there's a lot of things, AI and a lot of buzzwords, but we've been in this space for a really long time and are excited to continue to advance the technology and really lean into customer experience strategies and help customers and companies figure that out.
You know, it's so funny. Like, I actually came across the reason, how we even got connected. I don't even know if you know this backstory, but I was at CCW in Las Vegas earlier this year, and you guys were a sponsor there, right? You guys had a booth?
Sure. We did.
Yeah. And so I came across your booth as I was like scoping all these products out. I'm like, oh, anything that had AI in it. I was like, I must stop and listen. Yeah. And I was so impressed, not only by the demo that I saw, the product, the people in the booth. I got to tell you, like, you got a really fantastic group of folks there. And then connected with your team. I got to join a podcast with them, and then I got you. And so this came full circle for me, all from just like stopping by your booth and having some chats. So very cool.
Stop by.
Right. Very cool. But yes, I did get to see a demo of the product, and it is really, really interesting. So that's super cool to hear. Okay. Now listen, I always say I don't like to make the assumption because maybe this is what you wanted to do, but I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say, when you were a little girl, you did not have dreams of becoming the president of Mosaicx. So when you reflect back, what did you want to be when you grow up?
Oh my gosh, thanks so much for asking that. It's such a crazy story. When I was little, I grew up really poor. We didn't really have access to a lot of resources. I lived in, rural, mid-eastern parts of the United States in Kentucky. And I just wanted to be a marine biologist for my whole life, which was so funny because I lived nowhere near the water. So I don't know exactly, how I thought it was going to get from there to the other, but I always loved dolphins and orcas and the thought of, swimming in the ocean every day and like playing with dolphins. And overall, that journey from my childhood of, dreaming, and I actually had only been to the beach like one time. So I just kind of loved being near the water, and it filled my soul. I think as I got older and moved into my professional career, I realized that a lot of that resonated with just helping others, helping the world around me, making the world a better place. Kind of thing is really what filled my cup. And of course, as a child, that just manifested itself into like something cool and awesome, right? So that was my journey. And then throughout my professional career, I think I found opportunities to give back to the world and give back to others, and really help the people that I get to work with along the way. And that's really what fills up my cup, makes me feel happy.
I love that. Okay. So at what point though, did you go from this desire of being a marine biologist to then like pivoting into this path of like business, which kind of led to you to where you were? Like at what point in your life did that dream shift, or did just the approach to getting educated or whatever? I don't know. When did it pivot?
Yeah, thank you for that. I didn't, growing up, I didn't have a lot of access to resources or really, quite honestly, any encouragement to, seek higher education or any of that. And as I went through school, and recognized that there was a pretty big gap between my ability to go from where I was and be able to pay for like a move that would move me closer to the coast, or anything like that, to continue to pursue kind of a marine biology experience. I did pursue biology in college, which clearly I am not using today. So I think there's lots of people with those stories. But, along the way, I found jobs that allowed me to pay for my college and things like that. And I actually started to lean more into like humanness, and the teams around me, and how to show up in a way to serve others. And so I spent a lot of time in the early part of my career serving in like contact center spaces, learning how to help others solve problems, and kind of leaning and learning about just culture and how to build partnerships with teams and serve the needs and how to problem solve. And I think my focus on what I want to do when I grow up really switched when I realized two things. Like, realistically, you're not going to pay the bills as a marine biologist, so there's that.
Fair.
And I realized pretty quickly that I could make a larger change in the world, or affect a greater amount of positive impact through this corporate journey that I found myself on along the way. And I had the opportunity over the past like maybe decade or so to work for a company that provided some technology that did victim notification. And that meant a lot to me at the time. So just like a personal career, personal journey, really have struggled with some domestic violence situations. And so leaning into a company where I could help others who found themselves in a victim situation, I think was really meaningful, and really connected my passion and purpose with also my ability to help others and give back to the world. And that meant a lot to me. So I found myself at the intersection of, technology, customer experience, this passion and purpose for helping others who I felt like didn't have a voice. And it was interesting because it took me a little bit of time in my career to find my way to a company and to an area that gave back and found a really cool intersection. But it's really a magical time. And I know not everyone can find that for themselves, but it's really a magical time when you can get up every day and know that even in a small way, the work that you do helps other people. And that was hard. It's hard because we also knew that the work we did was important and impactful. And so there's a lot of like pressure that you feel in that space. But I was lucky to stumble into an opportunity moving from more of a contact center space early on in my career to Apris, which was the company that provides the victim notification. I came in as an entry-level person and was like, wow, this is like an amazing company. And I really want to spend some time, leaning in and understanding more about this. And in that way, it really sort of changed who I was and how I show up in the world. And it was funny because as I showed up, I was like a tier 1 technician when I first started there. And I saw this woman who was in the organization. She was like a VP of customer support. And I was like, wow, one day I want to be her, And I saw this strong woman and how she was really affecting such a huge positive change for victims across the country, for people in the organization. She was inspiring them to want to give back and do more. And I was like, that is really what I want to do. And it shifted me, I think, in a way from this sort of childhood dream of working near the ocean and doing all these things, to realizing and recognizing that there are other women, there are other people who look like me who can navigate to a space where they're not only helping other people inside of their workplace, but really giving a voice to people who didn't have one. You've got victims of all sorts across the entire country of different spaces who didn't have an advocate for themselves. And we were leveraging something as cool as technology to give those people not only a safety plan, but a voice. And that was really, really powerful for me.
Wow. Well, first, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing some of that in your background. I think it's very rare that any of us find the ability to align ourselves with such a mission-driven organization, right? Because I think in those moments you connected something that was a passion of yours as a child, which was doing good, right?
Yeah.
Like, and having this impact and changing the world. And maybe it wasn't the dolphins you were saving, but I think the people that you probably saved needed a little bit more. And so that's just tremendous work. So thank you so much for taking on that and like being a part of that journey. Cause like I said, too many of us are maybe not as inspired by the technologies that we are, working with and working for. And that's okay. They all are driving change and meaningful things, I think, to some extent, but definitely not to that extent. So that's really inspiring. I'd love to hear more about some of the pivotal moments in your career, right? Obviously, you had to make some decisions along the way that got you to where you are right now, which is pretty impressive given the background you've just shared with us. So what were some of those real pivotal moments that maybe even started as early as high school that got you to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. There's a couple of things. I look back and first of all, I look at people who really helped me along the way. I think when you grow up poor and you grow up without access to resources or even an example of someone to follow in the footsteps of, it's hard to believe that you can be more than what you came from. And I don't know how other women feel a lot, but I hear stories that make me, over time, have made me believe that I wasn't alone in this, right? And so I grew up very much, talking the talk in my head about you're not smart enough, you don't know enough, you're not pretty enough, like all the words that I think a lot of other women tend to find in their head. That just kind of prevent us from being brave and taking that next step. And I think for me, I have been lucky enough to find some advocates and some sponsors along the way. Those happened in my early childhood, with folks who encouraged me to do more, to stretch myself, that I could do that. And coming out of some really unfortunate, scary situations from like a domestic violence perspective, I ran into, a friend who later became kind of a life coach and who recognized my story and was just like, hey, you can do this. You're strong. You survived a difficult situation. And anyone who can survive that situation, who came from meager beginnings, has the fortitude to kind of do the next thing. And I don't think I believed her at all. Right. So I think there was a period of time where I kind of borrowed that strength and that gumption from those early mentors to say like, okay, all right, if you're going to expend the energy to believe in me, then, I'm going to take a step forward. And that's what kind of took me to my time at Appriss. It was like, okay, someone's willing to believe in me. Someone's willing to bet on me. I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to be grateful for that space. And across my journey at Appriss, I had the willingness, I'm sorry, I'm getting like choked up about it. I was fortunate to have people who were willing to be my mentor and my sponsor at Appriss. And so two of those folks were my direct leader at the time. And then this Lila, who was this like great female leader. And when I first got there, I was like, gosh, I want to be here one day. And I had the serendipitous opportunity to run into her in the hallway one day. and was just like, oh my gosh, I love you. I think you're doing, it was like meeting a rock star, right? It was like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. I really want to spend a few minutes with you. And she was gracious enough to do that. And, I talked to her about like, one day I want to do what you're doing. And I'm sure her initial thought was like, that's cute. And the story in my head was, there's no way that, I'm ever going to be able to do that. And then I worked for a gentleman who, along the way actually ended up becoming the president of our organization, but at the time was just my direct leader, and came into the organization and was like, I believe in you. And he gave me the empowerment and the bandwidth to stretch myself and to do things that I hadn't, either went to school for or been trained for. But he was like, I know you can do it, right? And so he leaned in, had belief in me. And all the while I was being mentored by this older person in a VP role. And along the way, the scope of my responsibility would expand, or I'd have the opportunity to take on, new components of my role or whatever. And just every sense of the way, there was this great, like, you can do it. I believe in you, and I think over the course of the first couple of years there, I really started to like change the narrative in my head. And so some of that was like, with the small wins. So, my scope of responsibility might expand, and, I would take on a new role and, find little wins along the way. It was a little easier for me to say, okay, you can do this. You've been through hard times. You've made it past that, kind of looking backward and saying, there's something to this. Someone took the time to believe in you. They're pouring in. You did the right thing. And so those small wins for me really led to a complete mindset change that has, I think, driven me through the course of the rest of my career. And I look back and credit that time to individuals who were willing to not only believe in me when I couldn't believe in myself, but also who were willing to kind of lean in and give me some latitude to stretch out and some opportunity to make mistakes and learn along the way. And that was really important for my career as well, because I learned that that's, now that I've been successful and found, opportunities in the role, I want to do that for other people. I want to lean in and shift my energy and encourage others. So I look for those spaces, those people who I feel like might be struggling or might not see themselves in the roles or opportunities that I believe they could be successful in. I want to just really lean in and, instead of, creating a fight over a seat at the table, like I want to just build the table, larger and say,
make a longer table, put the leaf in the table, add more seats. That's it.
Come on in, you can do it.
I love
Here's
that.
how you can get there, and let me know, what I can do to help you. And so I think that concept of giving back has been really a core part of my journey over the last few years, is just making sure that I'm giving back in ways that afforded me the opportunity to get to where I am today.
Becky, do you still keep in touch with these folks?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I was like, it would be a huge missed opportunity for them to not see where you are today and to know the role and the impact that they played in your tremendous story. Like, I mean, it's, yeah. I love that. And I always think that, I'm sure you feel it, right? When you see the success of others that you have helped and mentored, like there's nothing more rewarding than to see those people succeed. And so I just wanted to make sure that they know the impact that they made here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, especially when you move from one company to the next, you're not always quite as close, but definitely find those opportunities for, to reconnect. And it's heartwarming, right? To just see how, even though they were really impactful in my life, the conversations that I've had, have been the reverse, right? It's like, it's really meaningful, for them to have had the opportunity to help someone along their journey too. And it took me a little while to figure that out too, right? That, as a person who is mentoring someone else, you really do learn a lot, not only about that person, but you learn a lot about yourself when you have an opportunity to help someone and see how you can affect their, the course of their career journey too. So it's really quite rewarding on both sides of the fence.
Yep. I've always said that it's mutually beneficial. If you find the right people to partner together, like everyone wins in those situations.
The She's So Sweet podcast is brought to you by Client Success. Client Success is an all-in-one customer success platform to help post-sale implementation and success teams manage customers from new to renew. Through an industry-leading platform approach, Client Success gives businesses an in-depth view into customer health, product usage trends, along with churn and risk data so that your team can not only retain customers, but help them grow as well. Whether it's managing customer onboarding workflows in shared portals, building custom health scores, tracking sentiment with NPS surveys, or doing more with less through AI and automations, Client Success gives customer success professionals a true one-stop platform to manage all aspects of the customer journey. To learn more about the industry's fastest to implement customer success platform, visit www.clientsuccess.com. That's Client Success. Simple, powerful customer success.
Okay, now I hate to spend too much time on this, but listen, nobody gets to the top without overcoming some obstacles.
Yeah.
So as you think back on your career, what were some of those big challenges or obstacles that you had to navigate to kind of get you to where you are today?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. There's been so many, right?
But I know you've shared a couple.
Yeah, there's been so many, but I actually think something that was really quite pivotal in the moment was at the height of COVID, the company that I was at previously that I've been talking through, they really had a tremendous financial impact as a result of like everything kind of going on shutdown. And I lost my job as a part of that like financial impact that they received, which was, what it was a great decision by the company to let go the leadership levels so that they could protect, some of the team members who are closer to the front line. Having said that, at the moment, it was just terribly impactful for me. And I think one of the main reasons was I had made the mistake of really strongly intertwining my title with my personal value. And all of those things kind of wrapped together left me with this feeling of like loss and death, not knowing who I was, where am I going to show up in the world? What am I doing? Right. It was just so intertwined that I went through a long period of grief following the loss of my job. And everything happens for a reason. My dad was sick during that time, and we found out just a couple weeks after I lost my job. And I'm blessed to have had the time to spend with my dad. But from a professional perspective, I also spent a lot of time just thinking about who I am, what are my values, how do I want to show up in the world as a leader, how do I want to give back, how was I going to take the skills and knowledge that I had learned over my career to date and move forward in a way. And I will also say that the company I worked for, as I mentioned, was just so close to my heart and allowed me to find that like great intersection between passion and purpose and skill that I think for a period of time I was like, I'm never going to find this again. I'm never going to find a place where I'm excited, I'm happy, it connects to my passion, I can lean into people, all this stuff. But when I broke free of that and had an opportunity to think about my personal brand, how do I want to show up in the world? And how does that translate to what I want out of my career? It was much easier for me to find the next thing. And because I would have, interviews, but I was making sure that I was interviewing the other person at the same time they were interviewing me, right? I want to know that your company is going to afford me the opportunity to feel empowered. That was important to me. I wanted to know that the company had the opportunity for me to give back to the community, to the world, to my team around me. I talked a lot about what's the culture in the company because that's also really important to me. And so I was blessed to find this current opportunity at West. And while it looked differently than it does now when I first got there, I found a leader at West who I was really inspired by. So kind of talking about, the concept of seeing someone like yourself in a leadership position. I was lucky enough to be hired by a female president here at West. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And she was just an amazing woman who also believed in just building more chairs at the table. And I had the fortunate opportunity of mentoring with her as my leader, but also she was advocating. So she was a true sponsor and advocating for me in spaces that I didn't know about at the time, and have only found out even recently that she was advocating on my behalf behind the scenes. So that was a really awesome opportunity. And also the company that I'm with now, and as that has shifted and I've been able to lead here at Mosaicx, I found then does connect with my purpose of giving back, because our company provides the National Suicide Hotline. And so I found this amazing space where now, even though what we do is kind of a technology base, that those that we serve really do show up in ways that help the community. And so that's also been kind of an indirect way for me to get back to my passion and purpose. And I think reinforced that belief that it's okay to go through, it's like kind of going back to that, it's okay to not be okay, right? When you lose your job, which many people have done over the course of COVID and even recently, right?
Yep.
It's okay if you find yourself like mixed in between, like, who am I and how am I going to show up? Because if you spend a little bit of time thinking about what your values are, what your skills are, and understand that, there are some non-negotiables. What kind of culture do you work best in? How do you want to show up in the world? When you shape those things as a brand and start talking about them, like, those opportunities that come into alignment with that will come your way. And I know that sounds a little woo-woo, but it actually is kind of how things work, right? When you're talking about things that you're valued online, those get rolled into all the algorithms on the back end of that, right? And so then you get companies and people who are also in alignment with those values or those truths. And subsequently, you'll find the intersection between those conversations and your next opportunity. And that's what happened with me.
So Becky, I got to dig into this for a little bit. So you talked about this notion of kind of like your identity being tied up in this role and the title that you were in. And I hear that from a lot of folks. And to your point, right, there are a lot of people who are on the job market right now who are struggling to find work, who are 10 and 12 months into their search, struggling with depression and anxiety. And to your point, you talked about grief as an emotion there. And how did you make this pivot, this mindset shift that helped you realize that your identity wasn't tied into your role, right? That you are a whole person with tremendous value that has nothing to do with the work you were doing. What was it for you?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. It's tough. I am not going to lie. It is hard and it is a brutal journey, and there are a lot of tears involved. Right. And I think the way that I did it could look different than the way other people can do it, but to share that process, so, maybe someone else can learn from it. I think for me, it was, first of all, just so flooring. I started experiencing like actual grief process stuff. Like, there was an actual like death that occurred, and it feels like that, internally. Yep. And so there's a lot of like denial and, just shock, like all of the things that you would normally go through in a typical grief process. Totally. And I didn't know that was happening at all at the time when it was happening. But my behaviors were very indicative of that. And so having people around me who were willing to say like, you're grieving, and, and I'm like, oh, no, I'm not, it'll be ridiculous. So first and foremost, I think finding and trusting some people around you who can recognize what you're going through. And then secondly, get some help. And I mean that on like every level, right? If you're in a space of depression and anxiety and it's something that is beyond your capacity, then like seek some therapy, right? It's okay to not be okay, like first and foremost. But also like, look for coaches and mentors and other people who have been on the journey, because I think there's a lot of like nuggets of truth that you can just gather for free from people, right, who are willing to share their experiences on the journey. And that was kind of, once I figured out like I'm not okay, I spent some time, meditating, thinking, like journaling, just crying it out, just trying to really like process my emotions from that. And listen, I got back to the story in my head too about like, oh my gosh, you're never going to be able to find, a lot of the like naysaying, negative talk definitely came back, particularly when you're vulnerable. I think is the space when you find that the most. So I set myself in the mirror one day, and it was super awkward. I'm going to tell you, there's nothing more awkward than staring at yourself in the mirror. And I was just like, you are amazing. You have been through some real shit in your life, and you lived through that, and you made it through that, and you can do it again. And I did some really awkward days looking in the mirror, telling myself, and really the point of that, there's some psychological processes that can occur, right? When you're in a space where you're telling yourself negative thoughts, one or two ways you can combat that is to, every time you're hearing those things, to verbally say the opposite of them. You may not believe it at first. It may not feel real to you. But over time, what you're doing is you're training your brain to believe something different that's probably more real, right? Particularly if you start speaking truth. So, think about when in a workspace, whenever you hear someone in power say things that are not wrong, right? A lot of times we talk about, speaking truth to power. If we can do that to ourselves, we can change the narrative in our head. And that over time works for me. So just spending some time in the mirror, like speaking truth to power, like, listen, you can do this. It's okay. You did it before, you could do it again. And I started to list out for me, like traits, things that I knew that I did well from my other job based on feedback from other people or my boss or customers or whatever, right? I started to go back to like, what do I know to be true? And what I know to be true is that I'm great with people. I am a successful mentor of others. I understand how to solve problems. I'm great at creative problem solving. I'm great at leading change, right? And so I just spent some time talking to myself in the mirror, and not all day, right? Just a little bit here or there. And I really started to reinforce what I'm good at. And through that process, I also was formulating what kinds of companies I want to work for. What does the culture look like there? What do I want to do? I started making lists of companies that I wanted to go after. And I will tell you, West was not in that. They were not even on my radar, right? But I started to seek conversations with people who worked at companies like this to talk to them about anything I could think of to talk to them about. And I think it just is a journey over time when you start to change the narrative in your head. You start to get really clear on what you want. And then you just start having conversations with other people. And they don't always have to be like, hey, do you have a job for me? Right? It could just be about topics that you have in common, and start to align with the things that you know that you're good at. And again, I think it's about creating that brand of who you are and how you're going to show up. And you can do that online by talking about these topics that are in line with your strengths and skills, by connecting with other people who seem to be talking about the same thing. And you're kind of creating those narratives. And it's hard. It is really hard when you're in a space and you just feel like you've had 1,000 interviews, you're put in 1 million resumes, and no one's getting back to you. It's tough. I won't lie. And I did it in the middle of COVID when nobody could go and talk to anybody. Everyone was telling me like, go, show up and bring them a coffee. I'm like, I can't show up.
No, you're like, literally, it's illegal. I can't.
Yeah, I literally can't show anybody a coffee. It's crazy. So I know that, now we're in a little bit of a different space where you can kind of show up in person sometimes. But most of the time, businesses are operating in this way.
Yeah.
And I just think you have to get creative and figure that out. And still, it may not work, but I think being resolved to know that every person on this planet has their own unique skills and values. And those things are needed in all spaces. It's just about finding that right space for you, and believe that you'll get there. And if you have had that positive resolve, I firmly believe you'll figure it out.
Man, I mean, honestly, I could end this podcast right there and feel really good about what we've recorded, because that was some powerful stuff. And I was going to do a follow-up question on the, like, talk to me about the building your own brand part. And you already talked about it. So I don't even need to go further on that. Okay. We got to go to some happy topics here. So I want you to, let's get some sunshine here. You obviously had to have had some success, right? Or else you would not be sitting in the seat that you're in today. Let's reflect back. What are some of your proudest moments or biggest accomplishments to date?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many things. So I mentioned that Mosaicx was a part of the National Suicide Hotline. For us, it's been a long journey. We've been connected as a company to Vibrant Health and to the National Suicide Hotline for decades. But there became an initiative from the White House to increase the availability of that service. So to date, it was all just available by phone. And so we knew with various different generations and, channels of communication that moving to SMS was going to be really important. So there was an initiative to drive the creation of 988 as a short code. And so we were a part of a larger team, but the critical component that actually delivers the 988 service. So we were a part of rolling out the National Suicide Hotline in conjunction with 988. And now you can dial 988 on your phone, kind of like 911 or 211 or whatever. And you can also text it. And so, rolling that out, pros and cons, of course, but we saw over a 400% increase in usage to the National Suicide Hotline.
Wow.
Now, that's never something that you want to celebrate.
Right. We're not happy that the numbers are as high as they are, but
right.
It sounds like you gave them access to resources and support.
Absolutely. And so what we know to be true, that even though that's an anonymous service, what we know to be true is that we are, through research, there's a research group that is associated with our partner. We have found that we are reaching a younger generation, that we are reaching folks who traditionally are more introverted and who choose to operate through digital channels and offer greater expansion of services. So the interesting thing about the National Suicide Hotline, and really now is more termed like a lifeline or a crisis lifeline, is actually fundamentally, for lack of kind of a better term, our country's only free access to healthcare, to mental health care. About 98% of the calls that reach the lifeline are really about mental health care topics, financial distress, crisis, just relationship crisis, could be job crisis. Like there's just a number of different things where people find themselves in a situation where they're not sure how best to move forward, and they leverage that to find resources to help them navigate their challenges, whether those be financial or housing or food crisis, all kinds of things. And so that's been an interesting intersection for us to play a part of something so big that are helping so many people across the United States, and we're really honored to be just a small part of that. So that was an amazing career opportunity to be a part of something that is so impactful to so many people's lives. And then secondly, and a little bit different, because certainly that's very much tied to my job and my career, and a little bit adjacent to that, I had the opportunity to partner over the years with, at least over the last couple of years, with a PR firm called The Social Architects. And as a part of my partnership, we had some conversations following the launch of 988 about, how do we take some of these best practices and really expand that on more of a global front? Like, how can we affect a greater positive impact to mental health? And so I was having some conversations, and she was talking about some initiatives at the UN related to the SDGs, which are Sustainable Development Goals that are at a global level. And so there's a set of Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, at the UN level that are set to be measured through 2030. And there's a significant amount of those goals focused around mental health and well-being across the globe. And we recognize that we're not last year when we were having the conversations, we recognized that we're really not as a country, as a globe, making progress toward those goals. And I was like, we are doing some amazing things here in the United States. Like, why don't we push forward some initiatives to bring together like-minded companies, folks in the political sphere, various government entities. Like, there's a lot of people in this space. Let's bring them together and really focus on how do we take what we've done here in the US and bring that on more of a global space to bring together resources. And so, myself, along with a few other key individuals, came together and founded what we're referring to as the Global Mental Health Task Force. And we've had a couple, we launched originally in November of 2023. We've had a couple of other sessions at the UN where we're bringing together key resources, both inside of the UN from a global perspective, as well as corporate entities like ourselves at Mosaicx, other nonprofits like Vibrant Health and others, who are kind of coming together to think about all of the different spaces and channels through which we can affect a positive change across the globe for countries that are both first world, second world, and third world, by creating kind of a centralized access point or website, or, we're still kind of developing that, where you can bring resources together. And that would be information, encouragement, connection to resources that are more local. So I'm really excited about the opportunity. There's lots of great ideas, lots of like spinoffs that are happening in that space. And for me, again, it's just about being a part of enabling something much bigger than myself. And I have to tell you something, that little girl in her home who wanted to be a marine biologist never would have dreamt in a million years I would sit in the UN and be talking about something as big as mental health on a global space. It is the biggest honor of my life.
Okay, I gotta tell you something. Like, I was completely not prepared for your story today because I only knew at a surface level, like, what you had done. And now hearing actually what you've been doing, even in all the roles, and like, honestly, more importantly, just the things that you've highlighted. I mean, talk about impact. As one person, you should feel really proud of the lives that you're touching. It's really impressive. I hardly refer to anybody as a hero, but like, I'm sure there are many individuals who you have had a immense impact on and who would definitely give you that title. So just feel really proud of the work that you're doing. I'm very inspired hearing it.
That is very, that's humbling. That's humbling. Those are very kind words. I take no giant credit in any of that. I think my goals have always been about trying to connect other people in ways where, collectively we can come together as a team and affect great change. And I will tell you that not only have I had the fortune of finding myself to mentors and sponsors across my career to get me to where I am, but I have had the fortune of working with some amazing people who have come along this journey and help us to get to where we are and affect the changes that we have. And it's really through that space that I've had the opportunity and, quite frankly, the honor of, affecting some of these outcomes.
I think you may be my first guest where I'm like actually like swallowing to hold back tears, listening to different points of your story today. Truly inspiring. Okay. So listen, we've covered so much and I don't think anybody needs any more advice or any more inspiration. I think that you've given us enough, but if I was going to allow you to give us one more gift, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away with them?
This is a tough one. Believe in yourself. Don't give up. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you can't do the next thing. Surround yourself with people who know more than you, who look different than you. Listen. Gosh, tough one. And then I talk about Square Squad. We didn't really get into a whole lot of that, but I do think one good advice is always to surround yourself with those people who you trust to tell you the truth. And that can look like a lot of things. It can tell you when you're off track, when you're wrong. And as long as you surround yourself with those people and you're willing to listen to them, and you don't forget to listen to yourself, then you'll do great things in the world.
Oh man, Becky, that was, I don't know what I'm going to do listening back to this recorded episode, having been a part of the conversation today, but I just have to thank you so much for your time and obviously all of the sharing today. You've been super vulnerable and so open with us all. And I know that our listeners are going to get immense value from that. So thank you so, so much for sharing your journey with us. I'm like, trying to like just keep myself together. This was a lot. This is a heavy episode.
Oh, I'm sorry to make it so heavy.
No,
Thank you
it's so
much,
good.
Kristi. I am just blessed and honored to join you. I just scrolled through your list of amazing women that you've had on. Just humbled to be a part of the conversation. Thank you so very much. Like what you're doing and giving voice to women along their journey, and putting this out in the space where we can encourage others. It's an amazing thing you're doing. So I'm just humbled to be a small part of it. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, I love that. And I know all of our listeners are going to be so inspired by this conversation today. So if you enjoyed this, please go rate and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, connect with me on LinkedIn. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Thank you all so much.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Hi guys, I want to share a bit about an organization that I support called Wednesday Women. They're on a mission to increase the visibility of executive women leaders that you should know, learn from, and be inspired by. On LinkedIn, they share the profile of 2 amazing women each week, on Wednesdays of course. And now just imagine if we all followed, amplified, and nominated the women that we want to see more of. Their initiative provides examples of women CEOs, founders, sales executives, technical leaders, and so many more. By supporting Wednesday Women, you'll see more of these professionals in your social feeds, of course, but also on stages, podcasts, and panels. If you're interested in learning more and supporting their initiative, head over to www.wednesdaywomen.org or follow them on LinkedIn.